Hello, Matt here from RetroOnly.com. Today we'll be talking about how to open an arcade machine without the key. Before we get to that, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. No matter if you lost your key to the machine or if the key is simply not working, we're here to help. Have you ever needed to get into your arcade machine quickly, but couldn't find the key? I feel like we've probably all been there at times in our lives at one point or another. But don't worry, we're here to help and walk you through this issue. If you own an arcade machine and have accidentally lost the keys, you can try these methods to unlock it. You can use old keys, pick the lock, use brute force, use the screwdriver method, or drill the lock. In the rest of this video, we'll go into more detail about these various methods and the best way to perform them if you don't have a key for your machine. So keep watching to learn more about each one. First method is using old keys. Many different arcade machines all come with a default lock. And if you have an old key to a similar machine, you will often find that key will work for other machines too. Although the owner of the machine could have installed a more secure lock, most operators use a series of locks with the same key for all of their machines, so that way they only have to carry one key around. Leaving the default lock on the machine would also mean that someone else who has the same key, since combinations are limited, can open their machine. I've even read on some sites that in the past some manufacturers shipped every machine with the same lock, so that one key can open every machine they produced of that specific type of game. So the first tip is to simply don't throw away old keys. They may be useful if you own more than one machine. Most default locks will have flat keys, while some operators use locks with round keys as they're a bit more secure. We can't use our screwdriver method on them mentioned later, and picking locks may also require special tools. The next method is lock picking. The best way to open the machine if you can't find a key that will work is to simply pick the lock. People who know how to do it say it's really easy to do on arcade machines, as these normally have simple locks. But while this may be true for professionals, this method certainly isn't for everyone. If you want to learn how to pick a lock, simply search the internet. There are a lot of websites out there about picking locks, and you can even buy lock picking tools online now as well. Learning how to pull the pick over the pins properly is surprisingly difficult. The problem is that the mechanical skills you learned early in life involve maintaining a fixed position or fixed path for your hands, independent of the amount of force required. In lockpicking, you must learn how to apply a fixed force independent of the position of your hand. Because as you pull the pick out of the lock, you'll want to apply a fixed pressure on the pins. The pick should actually bounce up and down in the keyway according to the resistance offered by each pin. To pick a lock, you will also need feedback about the effects of your manipulations. To get the feedback, you should train yourself to be sensitive to the sound and feel of the pick passing over the pins. And this is really a mechanical skill that can only be learned with practice. There are some exercises that you can try as well that will help you recognize the important information coming from your fingers. The third method is brute force. I saw an operator do this on a machine he sold me once, and he didn't have the key with him. He said that arcade machines normally use cheap locks, so brute force would work. As he started pulling the coin door a little bit harder and harder, after a few moments the door just opened. What had happened was the metal plate inside had bent just enough so the door could open on its own. If you have a screwdriver or a flat piece of metal, then it's even easier. Just force it between the edge of the coin door and the frame and pull hard. Although this may temporarily damage the door, it will get the job done. However, if your machine is expensive or rare, you would not want to use this method. Number 4 is the screwdriver method. Okay, so if picking the lock didn't work, brute force is often the next best option. But if you don't want to risk damaging the door frame, then you'll want to try this method. If the original lock is still on the machine, and is not a recently built machine, it is possible to open the game using a screwdriver. Usually, a large flat screwdriver is all that you need. Insert it into the lock and then turn it around. However, this may or may not work for you depending on how strong you are and the age of the lock. How this works is the pin inside many of the original locks are made out of very soft metal. When you apply enough force, these pins will sometimes bend or get damaged enough that it will allow the door to come open. A similar method is to simply hammer the screwdriver through the inner part of the lock. That way, you will also break the pins so the lock can rotate. Obviously, you will damage the lock using this method, but they are relatively cheap and easy to replace. Number 5 is drilling out the lock. This is the way that most people choose to open most locks if they can't find any other older keys and get them to work. You simply will use a drill with a metal bit on it and drill right through the middle of the lock. And this works with all types of locks, with flat or round keys. There are really 2 different ways that you can do this method. First, learn how a lock looks on the inside and only drill through the pins which make up the lock. You can check the lockpicking guides to get a general idea. A lock uses small metal pins which the key has to align for the door to open. If you just drill through and destroy these pins, then the lock can rotate freely and the door will open. The drill bit doesn't have to be very big, it just has to fit the slot where you put the key in. The second method is to use a more brutal approach. Drill the whole center of the lock out. As there's only one screw in the end which holds the metal plate, it's possible to drill right through the middle of the lock. You will destroy the whole inside rotating part of the lock, and sometimes even the screw in the back. But sooner or later, usually sooner, the screw will fall out and the metal part falls into the cabinet, and then the door will open right up. Usually, you don't have to drill until you get all the way through the lock either, as about halfway through the lock will normally open as it's sufficiently destroyed. The inside part of the lock is normally made of soft metal, so it isn't too difficult to drill through. And even modern security locks, which have hard metal on the outside, will normally only have a very thin layer before the metal gets soft on the inside. It will take some extra time and often multiple drill bits to get through this harder layer if you have a newer lock, but once you're through that, it's easy to drill the rest of the way through. The good side of using this method is that you only have to replace the lock, while the coin door itself, which is normally more expensive, will not be damaged. Number 6, drilling a lock on a slot machine. One important warning, you will need to be very careful when drilling the lock out of a slot machine. Drilling a lock of an arcade machine is simple. Just drill straight through the lock. There's only a small metal plate in the back which will fall off, and the coin door opens. But there are several ways to drill a lock on a slot machine, and they all work, but some are a bit cleaner than others. The first is to take a large drill bit and completely destroy the inner rotating part. This may be a bit of overkill, but it works. The next thing you can try is to take a medium-sized drill bit and drill all the way through the lock until you get to the screw which holds the metal part which locks the door. Finally, the cleanest way, if you can't pick a lock, just take a small drill bit and destroy the small metal pins which make up the lock itself. Once these are broken, you often can also just turn the lock without any problem. But with a slot machine, you will not want to drill all the way through the lock and completely destroy the inside of it, the brutal approach mentioned earlier. You have to make sure that there's part of the lock left which you can actually turn. Because if you can't turn the lock anymore on the slot machine, it'll be impossible to open the front of the slot machine without damaging it. There are also many special tools that you can use to unlock locks like this without all the effort of drilling or picking, but these tools can sometimes be expensive, but they're something to consider. With many different options to get into your machine without a key, we hope you found your way in. No matter what option you used, we're glad we could help. Now that you know what works, you can help your friends or buddies if they're ever stuck without a key for their machines as well. So go ahead, be the superhero and save the day. This has been Matt from RetroOnly.com. Please Please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as check out our website at retroonly.com.